What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the Ultimate Marvel Universe. As you know, right now on my channel, I'm going back to recover some of the older original Ultimate Marvel Universe stories that I felt like I could have done a better job on, or some of the stories that I had skipped over. Like, for example, today's video is going to be about Ultimate Captain America Annual Number 1. Now, this was a book that we had technically skipped over. I honestly felt like it was not that important, but now going back over it, I kind of feel like we should go ahead and cover it. And the reason why, because it gives us the actual origin of Ultimate Black Panther in the original Ultimate Marvel Universe. As you all know, he did not appear that many times in the original Ultimate Marvel Universe, but a lot of people still want to know what was his actual origin. And so Jeff Lowe gave us his origin in this one book alone. Now, getting into the opening pages for today's video, we actually do pick up with T'Challa taking part in the Panther trial. Now, in this reality, the Panther trial is really used as a way to say, you are going to be a great king down the road, that you have earned the right to become the next king of Wakanda, but also you prove that you are a great warrior. Here's the problem with that though, guys. You see, for T'Challa in this reality, he was not supposed to become the next king of Wakanda, the next ruler of Wakanda. No, it was supposed to be his older brother Baku. Now, here's the thing though. For T'Challa, he still felt like he had the right to take part in the trial to just prove that he does earn the right to become the next king of Wakanda. And so he took part of the Panther trial. The problem is the outcome did not come out as he was hoping it would, because the Panther was actually able to do some severe damage to T'Challa and left him there bleeding out. Now, luckily for T'Challa, he was found by his older brother. But like I said, he was luckily found by his older brother because he was not supposed to become the next king of Wakanda, the next great warrior of Wakanda. Now, I want to shift our focus over to T'Chaka, the father to Baku and also T'Challa. And here is the reason why. We do learn that Baku and T'Chaka do not see eye to eye with one another. And the reason why? Because Baku felt like T'Challa was the favorite son. You see, T'Chaka allowed T'Challa to get away with everything. He spoiled T'Challa. And so because of that, T'Challa truly believed that he had the right to become the next king of Wakanda, the next great warrior for Wakanda. And so that is why he took part in the Panther trial. It's Baku saying, it's your fault, Dad, that T'Challa is right now laying in that bed with a team of doctors trying their best to save his life because you spoiled him. And now he thought he could become the next warrior. He took that trial and got severely injured. Now, there is another reason why Baku is mad with his father. You see, we kind of find out that T'Chaka had made a deal with Weapon X over in America. Now, before I explain what was Weapon X like in the original Ultimate Marvel Universe, I kind of want to talk more about the deal that was made. You see, T'Chaka told Weapon X, if you are able to save my son's life, I will give you some Wakanda technology. Now, that's a huge no-no because there is a law that says you are not allowed to give out technology to other countries around the world. It stays in Wakanda. But for T'Chaka, he would do anything right now to save his son's life. And so he was able to make a deal with Weapon X. Now, when it came to Weapon X, they had one heck of a history when it came to the Ultimate Marvel Universe. Let me explain. So back in World War II, you had the US and Canada governments come together and realize that they wanted more super soldiers to fight against the Nazis. And of course, that gave birth to Weapon X. And early on, they found Wolverine, better known as Logan. Now, when they found Logan, they realized that he was holding on to the X gene. Now, with the X gene, they realized that he was able to have some different kinds of abilities that regular humans don't have. And so they took the X gene and turned it into an airborne virus, which then gave way to more mutants down the road, which meant that Wolverine was the first mutant in the Ultimate Marvel universe. Now, later on, we learned that Weapon X was still doing different kinds of experiments in that facility when it came to mutants, but Nick Fury stopped by and he learned what they were doing inside that place, and he realized if word got out that mutants were not the next step in man's evolution, that in reality they were created by man, it could cause a riot across the entire world. And so Nick Fury killed every single scientist in that building and burned everything down. But then while doing that, he found T'Challa. He's kind of like, oh, okay, we found one of their guys here who is a mutant and they were working on him. And so getting back over to our main story here, we learned that they gave him different kinds of abilities, basically turning him into a mutant. And so we learned that when it came to T'Challa, he did gain enhanced strength, enhanced speed, night vision, and also a healing factor as well. But the biggest thing was he was given metal claws that pop out of his knuckles, very similar to Wolverine. And so when it came to Black Panther, now we know he went through the same process as Wolverine did. Now, like I said earlier, he was found by Nick Fury. And so because he was found by Nick Fury, when it came to T'Chaka calling in to see how his son was doing, Nick said, oh, hey, we found your son, better known as Black Panther. But here's the thing, he's now US property. You will no longer have the ability to see your son because technically Weapon X was a US facility. I mean, it was US and Canada facility, but still it was US facility. And so that made all their projects US property, including Black Panther. And so you had Nick saying, sorry man, you are not going to see your son at all. Bye. And the call ends on that note right there. Now the last page for the first story in this book, we do learn that to T'Chaka, T'Challa was not the favorite son. That in reality, it was Baku, which means that was why he was so hard on Baku, because he wanted to make sure that his son would be a great king down the road. The problem is Baku had left once he learned what his dad did when it came to Weapon X, and now he lost both of his sons. Now the rest of the annual is also trying to explain what happened in Ultimates 3. So let me explain. In Ultimates 3, we had technically learned that Black Panther was on the Ultimates, but then we learned later on in the story that Black Panther was not Black Panther. It was actually Captain America. And the big question was then, where in the world is Black Panther at? And so the rest of the annual actually explains that what happened to Black Panther after he had supposedly joined the Ultimates. Now, as we dive into the opening pages of this book, we actually do see Steve Rogers fighting against Black Panther. And the reason why, because you had Nick Fury call up Steve, say, hey man, I want you to go and battle against Black Panther. I want to see if you believe that one, he's a great fighter, but two, to see if the possibility he'll be great on the Ultimates. And so at the very end of the battle, we do learn that this section of the story does take place right after Ultimates 2. Now remember, in Ultimates 2, it was a big storyline where technically you had the Liberators being able to take over the entire country. Now our heroes were able to get rid of them by killing them, but hey, it was still a big event in America. And so right now America is still trying to recover after that big moment. But for Nick Fury, like I said, he wanted to see if Black Panther is good enough to be on the Ultimates. Now, it does seem like when this conversation is happening, the Ultimates still work for Nick Fury. And you have Nick saying, listen, Black Widow is dead. Hawkeye is gone right now because his whole entire family was killed off, which means the team is short-handed. And so I want to see if Black Panther can possibly take their spot. Matter of fact, I want you to take him under your wing to kind of show him the ropes of how to be a hero in our country. Now, their first mission together was to go after a character known as Thunderball. Now, like I said in our last video, when it came to Ultimate Hulk Annual #1, around this time in Ultimate Marvel, we began to see different members of the Wrecking Crew begin to pop up out of nowhere as villains, because originally they first appeared back in Ultimate Spider-Man #86, and they used to work for Damage Control, but then out of nowhere they became bad guys, and we're not told how in the world they were able to gain their abilities. All we know is that they became super soldiers in some kind of way. But either way, for Steve Rogers, he wanted to see if Black Panther is actually able to take down Thunderball by himself, which honestly, when it comes to Black Panther, he was able to do that so easily. But then after doing that, Steve's kind of like, you know what? It's cool that you are able to take down guys like that so easily, but I want to know why in the world you cannot talk to me. Like, that's very rude that you don't have the ability to speak to me like a normal person does. And that is when you have Black Panther take his mask off to show Captain America that he has scars on his throat, that he does not have the ability to actually speak. And the reason why, because when he was severely injured by the Panther, Weapon X was able to save his life, yes, but unfortunately, they were not able to rebuild his vocal cords. And so, unfortunately, this man was able to live, but lost the ability to speak. And so for Steve, he's kind of like, no, I need to know more about you. And so he goes to see Nick Fury. Now for Nick Fury, he has no idea what exactly happened to T'Challa before coming to Weapon X. Really, you have Nick say, listen, I know two things about the kid. First, that he is a mutant. And second, he was at Weapon X. And that is it. I have no idea what happened to him before he came to Weapon X. And really, you have Nick tell Steve he feels like it was because something T'Challa's father did to him, kind of hinting at the idea that maybe his father was somewhat abusive, not really knowing that no, T'Challa tried to take part in the Panther trial, and unfortunately he got messed up by the Panther. But that's really it for Nick Fury that he can share with Steve Rogers. Now we do jump forward in time where we do get to the point where we actually pick up with the Ultimates now no longer working for the American government. Instead, they're now on their own, and you have Tony Stark using his money as a way to fund the team. Now, we also get reminded that Steve Rogers used to date the Wasp. Yeah, you heard that right. But by this point, they had broken up. And the reason why? Because she went back to her ex-husband, Hank Pym. But we cannot forget that Hank Pym in this reality was a massive abuser. Like, this man almost killed her last time. But she was still madly in love with the man, and she found Steve Rogers a tad bit boring. And she said, you know what? I'm going to leave you and go back over to Hank Pym. Now, Hank Pym was actually arrested because he helped out the Liberators to take over America. But then midway through, he said, you know what? I was wrong for doing that. It's time for me to help out the Ultimates to take down the Liberators. Now, he was still arrested for his crimes, but Tony was able to make a deal to allow him to stay with the Ultimates, but he has to be under house arrest. And so Steve, when he sees Hank, he wants to break that man in half, but he knows that he cannot do that out of respect for the woman he still loves, which is the Wasp. But getting back over to the Black Panther plot line, you have Steve Rogers stop by the room of Black Panther to saying like, hey man, you know what? It's time for us to do some more training. But then he sees T'Challa on his computer looking up information about Wakanda. Now, this is where you have Steve learn that T'Challa is from Wakanda. Now, you have T'Challa being able to use his computer as a way to communicate with Steve to say, yeah, you know, I'm a prince, and matter of fact, I'm from that country right there, better known as Wakanda. I miss my father, but unfortunately, I am not allowed to go back to my home country. Now, for Steve's kind of like, wait a second. What do you mean you're not allowed to go back to your home country? Who told you that? Now, we already know it was Nick who most likely told him that, but also was Nick who told his father that, hey, Black Panther is now US property because he was at Weapon X. Now, this begins the process of us learning how Black Panther was not technically there when it came to Ultimates 3. So first, you have Nick Fury meeting up with Steve Rogers meeting up with Nick Fury, and you have Steve tell Nick like, hey, you know what? I believe it's time. I believe that Black Panther should be on the Ultimates. And Nick's like, you sure? And he's all like, yeah, I'm sure. And so Nick agrees, and bam, just like that, Black Panther is on the Ultimates. Well, not just yet. Because around this time in Marvel Comics, the Wasp was actually the leader of the Ultimates. If Black Panther is going to be on the team, she has to approve it. But at first, she's kind of like, I don't know if that's really a good idea to have him on the team. Now for Steve, he's kind of upset because he heard that Thor is trying to bring someone else on the team. And he's kind of like, wait a second, so Thor can bring somebody, but I can't bring somebody? Now this is Steve also playing the X card like, oh, I get it, because I'm your ex, I'm not really allowed to bring new people on the team. And so with the Wasp, she's kind of like, you know what, fine. If you want to bring him, you can bring him. He's on the team now. And we do learn the rest of the plan for Steve Rogers. You see, Tony Stark was able to make a second suit that's very similar to Black Panther's suit to allow Steve to pretend to be Black Panther, when T'Challa is going to be able to sneak back over to Wakanda to be with his family. And so that explains why in Ultimates 3, he was not really there at all, because in this part right here, Steve Rogers was able to sneak T'Challa out of America and over to Wakanda to allow him to spend some time with his family. And then you have Steve go back to America and wear the suit that Tony had made to kind of help with the idea that Black Panther is actually around. But in reality, he never was in Ultimates 3. And so with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please, leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.